The only person I don't have is Karen Rodia, but we have a quorum.
Excellent. So are we live?
Yes, you're good to go.
All right. At 6:31, I will call this meeting of the Stratford Board of Education Curriculum Committee to order, and we do have a quorum. So our next order of business is I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September's meeting.
So moved.
So moved by Denise.
Second.
Second by Monica. Thank you. Any discussion? No? Okay. So roll call vote. Denise?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Monica?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
And the co-chair votes yes, so that is approved. Moving on to items for review and possible action. Items A, B, C, D, and E were presented to and moved to the board with a favorable recommendation at our meeting on August 25th, 2020. With the hubbub of COVID and special meetings, these courses somehow did not make it onto the board agenda and thus were never officially approved by the board. So tonight we're going to revisit these courses and repass them again. Can I take them as a bundle, A through E?
We do have individuals here if there are any questions that you would like to ask. But if you're happy about moving them forward again, go right ahead.
Do you need a motion first before we go into that?
Yes, let's take a motion.
I'll make a motion to send all those curriculums that were previously approved to the board with a favorable recommendation.
I'll second.
All right, second by Robin. Is there any discussion? Allison?
I just had a quick question about enrollment in the courses. I remember last August, Harold saying we had however many kids enrolled. So I just want to confirm first that all these courses are currently running, or when they're going to be running, and then the enrollment in them.
Sure, I can confirm. Definitely Chemistry 1 is running. We have a huge enrollment there at both schools. I'm looking at the wrong one. Environmental biology, same thing. Probably even a slightly higher enrollment in environmental biology, because that's, even though we don't have required courses in science, that's one of the ones that's almost a default. As far as the AP Mechanics C that is running at Bunnell, that's not currently running at Stratford High School, that one is largely based on having a large enough student interest and cohort. They have to be taking calculus at the same time. Plus, they have to be interested in taking that course. And I can double check on the SAT math. I don't believe the SAT ELA ran last year. Kirsten, is that running at all this year at either school?
I'm trying to pull up Power School to see, but I know we offered it. I just don't know what the enrollment is. I'm pulling up Power School.
We don't have any of these numbers tonight. Like, I am curious, Harold, about that the advanced placement physics C, how many students are actually taking it, that are taking both at the same time. So if we don't have those numbers, I would, at a later time, if we could get them. And then what about AP Latin?
Well, that's a new course that we're bringing to you tonight. I can certainly get those numbers for you and the enrollment numbers.
So we'll take the Latin separately.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions, comments, concerns on A through E? Okay. So
Harold has a question.
Oh, Harold, I'm so sorry.
Not really a question. I know I'm not a committee member, so I just wanted to. I was able to quickly look it up. There are 17 students currently enrolled in the AP Physics C Mechanics.
That's good news. Okay, so roll call vote. Denise.
Yes.
Robin.
Yes.
Monica.
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
And the co-chair votes yes, so all those classes will be forwarded to the board with a favorable recommendation to be included on our next monthly agenda. And moving on to 3F, AP Latin. Ms. Musari.
Yes, good evening. How is everybody? Okay, I have with me Latin teacher Andrew Holmes, and he's been a wonderful addition. And because of Andrew's presence, along with Mr. Connors, we have really been able to see an increase in interest in Latin. And we'd like to be able to offer AP to those students that are interested. We have looked at adopting the College Board's version of the AP course, and I think one of the internal documents you got, which was kind of our notes for AP review and what the overview, what that would look like, was based off of that AP College Board's, curriculum syllabus. So I'm not sure what other information that you would like from us. Andrew's here to really talk about being in the classroom on a regular basis. That'd be great for him to share some of that with you. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll let Andrew share a little bit about his experience with the Latin students, and I can follow up with some other information for you.
All right. Hi, everybody. So this year we're doing AP Latin kind of as an independent study unofficially, hoping that it'll be approved as a more official course. I have 5 kids in Latin 5. The Latin program's been growing a lot, and these kids didn't have a Latin teacher really their first year, so they stuck with it anyways, which is amazing. That first year, Stratford couldn't find anybody to fill in. But so 5 kids ended up sticking with it all the way through Latin 4, and 2 of the girls approached me interested in taking the AP exam this year. And so we've kind of set out doing that on the side where I'm splitting the class and giving them their own separate work in addition to what the other kids are learning in terms of the majority of the class are learning about subjunctives right now and advanced participles and subordinate clauses. Whereas the girls, I'm kind of giving a little bit of a blitz on that kind of stuff just so that they can get the grammar that they need going into the AP exam. The AP Latin exam is a literature exam, so it's always based on 2 authors. Julius Caesar, who wrote De Bello Gallico, which is a war correspondence as he tried to spread propaganda back to the Romans in order to increase his popularity, partially because he feared being tried for treason when he returned back to Rome, having given up his governorship. And so he looked for a lot of popular support, and this propaganda ends up influencing a lot of later politicians and a lot of later documents. And then Virgil is the other one. So one prose, Caesar writes in prose, and then Virgil writes epic poetry. Virgil writes in the tradition of Homer's Odyssey. He's influenced by that, and then that tradition continues into, for example, Dante, the Divine Comedy, Dante's Divine Comedy. Actually, Virgil is the tour guide in the book as you go on your tour of heaven, hell, and purgatory. And then later it kind of culminates in Milton's Paradise Lost, where you follow along as Lucifer takes you on his journey as the tragic hero, I guess you could characterize him as in Paradise Lost. But so the entire test is just predicated upon the students reading a large amount of Virgil's Aeneid and Caesar's De Bello Gallico in Latin, and then accompanying that with English readings. There's not enough time for them to read the entirety of both books, so they read probably about a third of each of them, and then the rest of them in English on the side. And the test is just a series of multiple choice, short answers, and essays, comparing and contrasting grammar and then themes and motifs in the 2 of them.
Wow. I feel so impressive. You talking about it is impressive.
It's much better to hear it from him than to hear it from me, that is for sure.
That's amazing. That's amazing stuff.
I have a question just because both of my children went all the way through Latin. And so they take Latin 1 freshman year and obviously 2, 3, and 4. So they take 4 in AP simultaneously, or is the plan that they skip 4 and just, if they want AP, take AP?
So ideally, the goal would be to have Latin in the middle school, where kids could start a little bit earlier and then work their way up through all 4 levels and get through the 4 and then have AP their 5th year, which is what my school did. I took Latin starting in 7th grade, and then senior year was your AP. However, my first job teaching was in West Hartford, and they did it in 4 years. They would do, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Cambridge textbooks. They're probably the most popular textbooks right now in Latin. They're essentially a storybook. Instead of being like boring old textbooks, it's a novel, and you follow a family, and just every chapter gets more complicated grammatically and adds in more vocabulary, so that they kind of absorb it a little slower and more naturally. And so if you set the pace that each year, Latin 1, you finish the first book, Latin 2, you finish the second book, and Latin 3, you finish the third book, which is a very reasonable pace. I've done 1.5 books in a year before at West Hartford. So 1 book a year is a like rigorous but good pace for them to also have a lot of time to delve into culture and things like that. If they get through the 3rd book by the end of their 3rd year, they're more than prepared. In fact, about halfway through the 3rd book, I often the story kind of lulls a little bit at the end of the 3rd book and doesn't really go anywhere after that. So it's pretty common for teachers to just stop using the Cambridge textbooks at that point and actually go into authentic Latin anyway. So it's really not particularly crazy to have students go through 3 years and then the 4th year be AP. It's not like they're skipping something, really. These kids were at a bit of a disadvantage with all the craziness of COVID, obviously. Their first year, these 2 girls, their first year, they didn't have a Latin teacher at all. It was a Spanish teacher filling in, if I remember correctly, Denise, which was awesome. She did a great job, but obviously it was a little bit slower than it would have been. And then these last years have been a little bit slower because of COVID. So the only reason I'm having to throw a lot of grammar at them right off the bat is because of that. If we had gone at 3 normal pace years, they would have known this grammar ahead of time anyway. And they would have been in a solid position to go into AP in their 4th year. It's really more a matter of, does a kid want their 4th year to be really, really fast-paced literature reading of these 2 authors exclusively for an entire year? Whereas normally in a Latin 4 regular class, you might toss in some fun authors. I mean, not that they're not interesting, but there's other fun authors like Ovid and Marshall and all these different authors. And Aesop's one of my favorite. He writes fantasy fables, like The Tortoise and the Hare comes from Aesop. And so kids get a kick out of reading those. Those are things you don't have time for if you're doing the AP exam, obviously.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, what high school are you at? I don't know if I missed that in the beginning.
Stratford. I'm at Stratford.
Stratford.
Are
we
Dylan
offering?
teaches over at Bunnell, and I teach at Stratford.
Okay. That's it. I don't have any more questions.
So Denise, my understanding is that, we're bringing this to the subcommittee because if they would like to move forward with offering an AP Latin course, then we would look at the curriculum, right, that we want to make sure is in place. So we would be returning again for the subcommittee to look at a curriculum.
And if I might throw it out there, they have the pre-made curriculum by College Board is very thorough, down to themes per chapter, standards from Common Core, essential questions, everything.
Right. Yeah, we still would like to bring it to the subcommittee for them to look at.
So are we saying yes, go make this curriculum, or passing this course on to the board to approve?
Well, we first need approval for the course itself.
Perfect.
Okay, and then we would come back and write the curriculum and bring it forward, or look at the AP curriculum and see if it's appropriate for Stratford.
Super.
And you
I'm just
say
gonna share
right
one
now, you said right now there are only 2 students who are doing this?
Yeah, right now I have 2. Next year's incoming level 4 kids is a lot bigger class. There's only 5 total in level 4 this year. But yeah, 2 currently, and then Dylan actually, Denise, I don't know if Dylan talked to you about this, but he was talking to a couple of kids who were interested in it as well recently.
So what we had talked about was if we had to, I mean, we know technology works, that if we had to have one teacher between the 2 schools working with the students, then we would do that, because we have, between the 2 buildings, we would definitely have enough for, a class.
So it would be kind of like a virtual offering.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to get us going at least.
I was just going to share that as a concern about the number of students in a course and creating a section for, like, what's our minimum, right, of number of students when we're offering a course to pull a teacher.
Staffing for this, though. So staffing for this, are we pulling from somewhere, or how are we handling staffing for this?
No, so currently Andrew has them in the same classroom.
I just did split class.
It's a split class, and we have staffing between Andrew and Dylan. We wouldn't need additional staffing. We would just, one of them would have to take the AP course, and maybe one would have to take the 4 honors. We'd have to split it that way, at least in the beginning, because it's going to be, the numbers aren't going to be high in either building because we're still building, but
offering the AP in and of itself is a draw that probably a lot of kids take French and Spanish over Latin, just knowing that those will culminate in AP.
Right. And Denise, just to clarify, when you say one of them would have to take the AP and one, you mean the teachers, the instructors, or the students? Okay, got it. So they would partner and collaborate. Okay, they would partner. Okay, I think that's great.
Yeah, so that way we're not creating extra sections. We're just using our human capital. Yeah.
Totally. Okay. But I do have a more deeper question, which somewhat, not what Andrea is looking for right now, but how do we offer at the middle school? It's like, when are we going to have that conversation, right? Like, how do we revisit that? So
listen, I would love to
keep it top of mind. And like, we've never done that, right? Have we done that before and take it away, or have we just not done that?
We had the Latin 1 conversation at the middle school, not since I've been here. But we've talked about really wanting to do that, and again, that's again some. I'm sorry, I have one. I just need to take care of one thing.
I'll chime in on this
Dr.
conversation.
Gita,
How many? How common?
I talked about this already, because we think there's a need. At the middle school for some options for students for whom, Romance language might not be something that, because the program at the middle school is really a high school course offered in 2 years. So if a student isn't enrolled in 7th grade, if they're taking reading, or if they transfer into our middle school from another school district, they come in at sometimes the middle, like at the beginning of 8th grade or something. But if we had another course that was an option for them, that might be helpful. I'm sure many of you have experienced the same thing. Latin is, knowing the Latin vocabulary, in science, in multiple disciplines, it really pays, I think, to have a good understanding of foundation of words and meanings. So personally, I thought that was very helpful.
Do other surrounding districts offer this at their middle school level?
So when I grew up in Morris, Connecticut. I went to Region 6 high school. They've had some issues lately with just declining student populations in general, and some choices I don't 100% agree with. They're also merging with Litchfield High School soon. They've begun that. Actually, the Litchfield superintendent is also the superintendent of Region 6, because they're moving towards merging the 2 schools just because of the struggling numbers. But when I went there, I graduated in 2007. They offered French, Spanish, and Latin starting in 7th grade. they would do a rotation actually in 7th grade where every kid had to try each language for a quarter. And then in 8th grade, they had to pick one and stick with it.
We've actually discussed that as well recently.
Exploratory.
And then, having exploratory in the 7th grade and then having one solid year of 8th grade, which would make things probably a lot easier for all of us. But
I think it would be great for us to offer.
Or to branch out, like other, just nothing against Latin, it's amazing, but Mandarin.
But just
it's big in other districts. So.
Right.
Now we're talking about real staffing implications. So
let's start with what we have and expand. Yeah.
But I agree, that would be great. I think I'd be in that classroom every day.
I would be signing up for that.
Amazing. Any other questions or comments for our Latin experts? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to forward the AP Latin course to the board with a favorable recommendation.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Rodia. Second?
I'll second it. So we're recommending the course and they'll come back and give us the curriculum for approval. Perfect. I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call vote. Janice?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Monica?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
And Allison? And the co-chair votes yes, so it will be moved on. Thank you so much, you two, for the presentation. It was really interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. All right, moving on to items for information. We are going to receive an overview of Gizmo and Pivot resources.
Yes. Harold is going to be demonstrating some of the resources that we're using at the secondary level. These particular resources, I'm sure he'll elaborate on this, but one of the things they've come to my attention, especially as we're trying to support students who may be on quarantine and are not able to be in person in school for some of the science courses that they're taking. And so I asked Harold if he would show some of this to you because I believe, Harold, maybe last year was the first time we really started to look into this, and he's moved this forward as something he feels is really going to help us support students.
Right, so last year when we were dealing with all sorts of restrictions, especially in the science labs, which is carried through a little bit even to this year, we were pursuing some other possible ways to ensure students could continue and have a lab science experience, even if they couldn't have lots of lab science, hands-on labs in the traditional way. So a couple of resources came to light. One of those is Gizmos, which is by Explore Learning, which is basically online simulations, very detailed online simulations that students are able to get in and manipulate. I'll give you an example of a couple of those today. One at a middle school and one more at a high school level, and as well as another product called Pivot Interactives, which is a little bit different, and it also does lab simulations, although these are more video-based, and they have a lot of built-in tools so that students can do measurements. For the most part, these are being utilized in our physics classes. The Pivot is largely being utilized in physics classes as well as some AP classes as well, whereas the Gizmos is a tool that we've experimented with down to 4th grade, but are largely seeing the gains down to 7th grade. So roughly grades 7 through 11 have access to this. All science teachers have access to it. So I'll just quickly share my screen. Like I said, I was going to show, just make sure I am sharing, I believe I'm going to share the whole web browser. So can everybody see sort of the blue Gizmo screen right now? This is generally their general login section. And now if I click on it, I'm going to show you, so here's a digestive system. Can everyone see the organs and things? Okay. I picked this one because I thought it was a pretty nice synopsis of sort of a Gizmos piece that might be appealing, especially for middle school students as they're learning their life science. Our 7th graders are finishing up a lot of to be honest with you, some introductory pieces. Seventh grade in Stratford is the first time that they have a real dedicated science lab experience in general, as opposed to sixth grade, because our sixth grades are in the elementary buildings. That's obviously a conversation we could have and have had for decades, but moving on. So soon, this group of seventh graders is going to be moving into what we call the McKenna unit, which is an open SciEd unit, and it's all about body systems and understanding how different systems interact, very interactive. There's a lot of phenomena driving it. So this would, be one that would match into that. So what we're looking at right now is a student interface. So if I'm a seventh grader, what I can do is I can drag and drop the various organs and pieces to form a digestive system. So students might say, well, I'm pretty sure, I've got a throat, I've got a stomach, not really sure what happens after that. So they might just sort of take a guess and throw some different pieces on there. Hopefully they'll get the last piece right. And then there's a bunch of small organs. And now here we're sitting here as adults and probably thinking, well, I know that's out of order. But then we go to the small organs and then people are going, well, I can probably figure out where the salivary glands go and maybe the gallbladder, but I'm not sure about all of these pieces. So the kids would sort of drag and drop and experiment a little. Let's just pretend we threw a couple things up there. Then, of course, they can bring up some food. And now what we're going to do is do the simulation. And the last tab is showing how the body is processing the sugars, the proteins, the fats as it goes through. So you can imagine, again, I showed this one specifically to think of a seventh grader as they're going through this particular piece. So we can see it looks like some of the sugars are being absorbed. So that's a good thing, although it doesn't look like we've gotten any protein whatsoever out of this hamburger. And it looks like, well, we've got some carbohydrates that have been processed, some sugars that have been processed, and at this point, that's how it ends. Yeah. So again, you can analyze the waste, you can analyze what's been absorbed, and again, this is an example of a gizmo. So a student can look at this data and go back and say, well, that didn't work. Let's take a look at some of our smaller organs. Hey, I wonder what these different pieces do. I wonder what a gallbladder does. I wonder what a pancreas does. Because a lot of what we're trying to do in science now is, I think I've used the phrase before when we were first getting started. It's about figuring out instead of learning about. So the traditional science model is the teacher stands there, they have a book, they explain several things, students write down a whole bunch of definitions, and then we do an experiment to verify the very things we just learned about. What we're trying to do is flip that around on its head so that students are experimenting and trying out different things before they learn the formal terminology and move forward. So another example from Gizmos, more of a high school level example, probably not surprised to see. Here we have your classic frog dissection. So here you have the scalpel, forceps, and pins. And in this version, it's actually, stepping the student through how to sort of use the scalpel. And then they can use the forceps to open up. They can pin things back if needed. Or they can just move back to sort of, I missed. There we go, I got to do it carefully. And then the elements can be pulled out and put to the side for examination and study, just things like that. So I figured, this might be one of the things people think about when they think about virtual labs, is the whole idea of not, offering an alternative to students who are a bit squeamish about opening up, a dissection kit. The last thing I wanted to show was a little bit about Pivot. Pivot has a much more, I would say, adult sort of look to it. And again, that's why it's largely used in the physics classes and some of the AP classes. These activities, this particular one has several pieces stepping students through. These are also randomized. So right now, whereas it says select trial 8, another student might say select trial 2, select trial 10, select trial 9. And some of the reasoning for that is to ensure that students are authentically working their own work as opposed to just, everybody gets the same thing and they all get the same answers. So if we go to trial 8, we can load that. In this case, this is a physical science demonstration. And if we hit, let's maximize that so it's a little easy to see. If we hit play, we can actually see the dart shoot out and hit the car. Now what we don't see is what happens afterwards. So if I rewind that again, you'll see the dart to the left, shoot out and hit the cart. But then it pauses right there. Now, this also enables students to back it up slowly, frame by frame, and analyze the motion as it's happening. Because what they have to do is in this activity, they have to determine if the dart has a mass of 28 grams, the card has a mass of 350, as that dart is coming at a certain speed, what's about to happen? And Pivot gives them several tools. Stopwatch on the bottom, so as we're stepping it through, you can actually see the exact number of seconds down to the 10,000th of a second has gone by, as well as an interactive ruler, so you can sort of determine exactly how far it's traveling as it goes through. And I only show that, I'll sort of skip ahead to the punchline once a student has entered in their results. And actually, if they enter in a result that is significantly off, well, in this case it was pretty good. So if I were to say, if I entered a result that was significantly off, which wasn't that one, it will give them a warning about that. So it says your measurement is way off. You're telling them you better go back and fix this, or else as you go through, it's going to carry through, and the error is going to make a difference as you go through. As you get toward the bottom, a student is basically making predictions about what they think is going to happen. Once they do that, they can lock it in, go to part 2, and then in part 2 is the grand reveal, of course. They go to trial 8, which is the one that was assigned to them, and they can actually see, again, bringing in the tools, the measurement, they can determine if their prediction was accurate or not, and if not, then how much was it off by, and go through, and they can calculate their percent error, so to speak. So I'll stop sharing there. But again, I just wanted to very briefly show you a couple of tools that we have been able to make a good use of. They've really enhanced the curriculum. Not only has it enabled teachers to have more hands-on labs, and it's in a time and space where it's been difficult to do hands-on labs. I shouldn't say hands-on, they're more virtual labs. But also, some of these activities allow us to do things that otherwise would be very expensive to do if we were buying dissection kits for all of the students, or in some cases would be dangerous to do. Or not practical to do with a large group of students all at once. So that's all. I did want to show that to everyone, and we will be looking at its future use going forward to determine what the best place for it is. Obviously, that may have a budgetary impact as we go forward with our planning, but I did want you to see what we're using right now.
Well, thanks for the demonstration. It's quite nifty, the technology. Much different than my age. Does anybody have any questions regarding Gizmo?
I do have a question. Harold, what grade level did you say this is being used at currently?
For this year, we're going down to 7th grade. It does have the ability to go down. They have a couple overlapping products. I want to say that Gizmos itself is intended to go down to about 2nd grade. And then they have this little K2 platform that is totally different that I'll honestly say I don't know much about. But we did find that as far as teacher use and the ability to implement, 7th grade and up seemed to be the sweet spot for right now. There's also the tug and pull that as we're getting back to more in-class demonstrations, we're trying to encourage that as much as possible while also giving tools for teachers to use. So we're trying to, I don't know if the word discourage the heavy use of Chromebooks that we've been used to for the last 18 months. That might not be the best word, but we're trying to get more hands-on, more tactile learning going on. But in some cases, it does fill a nice need.
Okay. Because I was thinking something like that would allow, like that sort of resource / technology would allow us to offer certain things at an earlier grade, right? So you're introducing kids to things that, like you said, would have been more costly, but through the technology, we're able to introduce them to things at an earlier age, expose them to certain courses, younger, and I guess just build up our offering for, the younger kids. So, okay.
Harold, just a quick question. You might not have the answer, but are these like site licenses, or did the district get a license for these, or how?
Yes, in essence, I think the way it ended up working out, we did it as one district purchase, but it's allocated across the 4 buildings. If I'm remembering correctly, and maybe Debbie might be able to correct me, but that's out the office. But I believe that the total cost to cover all 3,000 secondary students or thereabouts I think it was somewhere around $11,000 total. So it's about $4 a kid when you spread it out amongst the entire secondary. And that covered both products. They're actually offered by different companies, but that covered both of them.
Yeah.
Of course, the money that's funding those products currently is going to, as you know, disappear in 2023. So just wanted to make sure it's on the radar.
Mm-hmm. I was asking.
Anybody else?
I sorry, just to Harold's point, this is where I think for me, proving the successes of certain programs, right? When it comes budget time, and not even budget time, but to talk about the successes from very early on, so that everyone who has a voice in the budget understands the value of the programs and not just wait until budget time to say this has to be cut, right? Because then we're probably taking something valuable away because we don't understand the true impact.
Great, thank you, Denise. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And moving on to an update on how we are supporting our quarantined elementary students.
Yeah. So, I wanted you to see what we were using at the secondary level for students. At the elementary level, the plan has been to hire virtual tutors. So we have just finished hiring the last tutor. So we've just hired 7 tutors, 1 per grade level. So we have 1 of the 7 designated to work with students who are quarantined in kindergarten. Okay, and then we have a first grade tutor, a second grade tutor, and so on. So the way this system works, all of the tutors report to actually Chapel School. We have 2 rooms in Chapel. One room has 4 tutors in it, the other room has 3. And they've been going through training at this point. Our math department and our literacy department, as well as our tech department and our specials area, has gone to all of the tutors, worked with them, showed them how to run programs, talked to them a little bit, obviously, about Google Classroom, etc., so that they're familiar with the tools that students would be using to access information. Our tutors work with the reading consultants and the math coaches in the buildings that the students who are quarantined come from. They have the opportunity to speak to classroom teachers. And so the whole point of this program is to keep students engaged while they might be quarantined, either because they're ill with COVID or because they were exposed to somebody and they have to stay out. So we're very excited about this. What happens is if a child is quarantined, then we give them the link to the tutor for their grade level, and they sign on. And so the tutor might be working with one child or a small group of children. They're not necessarily classmates. They may be from different schools. And so the tutors have to take some time to get to know the students and sort of schedule the day for them. Obviously, a kindergarten student's schedule is going to look a lot different than a 4th grade student's schedule. We're working with the special departments, so for PE, art, music, the children won't necessarily be doing exactly what their colleague or their peers are doing in class, but they would have something similar to a substitute for those particular disciplines, maybe a substitute lesson, so that they still can engage in some kind of an art project or music or something to that effect. But over the course of time, we're looking at the most possibly 8 days that a child might miss if we're going with a 10-day quarantine. So that's sort of the gauge that we're using. And both Sue Schmidt and Sam Rosenberg, as well as Val Calvanese, people from the tech department, Brian Frazier, all coming together to try to support the curriculum and the lesson plans for these students. So we finished the training today. We've given the tutors a chance to work and get to know the curriculum, the units that are covered at each grade level. And actually the plan is that once they get familiar with their grade level, we'd like to have some overlap. So if for some reason one of the tutors wasn't available, somebody else could take on that grade level as well. So we're excited about this. The people that are on board are, dedicated and excited about supporting kids. So we're hoping that we're going to be starting that either this week, I think within the next 2 days. So Sue and Sam have been over there helping out.
So let's say, and here's hoping that like grade 2 doesn't have anybody out on quarantine. Mm-hmm. What would the assigned tutor then be doing if he or she has no assignees?
Good question. As you know, we also have tutors that are being funded through grants that are actually in school during the day. And so we're expecting that virtually these tutors would be available to other schools that may need some support during that day. So the principals know that. Again, it's elementary, so it's K through 6. It's not throughout the whole district. But they would also be available to help in other schools if they're not, working with kids at the grade level that they're supposed to be with.
Virtually from chapel.
Yes.
Karen.
Does this also cover the medically fragile students that may not be able to attend in elementary?
So we are working with Heather Borges, because if we have medically fragile students, they obviously would have a plan in that. And for the most part, Heather has their programs set up, but we certainly, obviously, would be available if they needed assistance with that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we're excited about this. Hi, Janice.
Hi, I have a comment, I should say. As you're talking about, kind of that component where quarantined kids from different schools, but at the same grade level, would be working with these tutors. And, earlier when Denise and Mr. Holmes, I think, Andrew, we're talking about the two teachers kind of like collaborating. I am liking what I'm hearing about, because it's sort of like we're establishing teams, right? It's like teams of educators and exposing the kids to more adult educators, not just like a single teacher that they're spending majority of their time with. You hear like the more you can expose them to those adults, the better for them. So the fact that we're put in a position that we have to start working like that, being forced to work like that, it's, we're getting to do something that we should be doing in a sense, and I just like what I'm hearing from that aspect. So I just thank you.
Yeah, we were a little concerned because hiring tutors was difficult. We weren't able to get all 7 of them at the same time. So, it took a couple of weeks for us to do that. But based upon the people we have, we looked at their experience and placed them at the appropriate level. I think the thing that more than anything else we learned last year was that if students didn't remain connected in some way, it was very difficult for them to come back. And so being able to, even if it's not necessarily their teacher or their classroom or whatever, they're still connected with content that they're familiar with, language. I mean, we're using Ruler. The whole big thing about making sure that you're connected, helping children to become part of a small learning group with individuals that they may or may not know.
Right.
So there's also that piece of it as well. So it's really about just supporting kids to help them know that they're still connected to the school district and they'll be back soon.
Right. And you made a good point, because we know like one person can't fulfill every need for every child, right? So the fact that they're being exposed to other adult educators, or, people in the school system, and their learning gives them more opportunities to form connections with adults. And once they have that connection, we know how they'll thrive, right? So again, it's just more positives, I think. And, thank you guys for working on that.
Jessica.
Hi. I just have a couple questions, wonders about, how the district is sort of, because you're pooling from multiple schools, like what work is being done to just like consider pacing of curriculum, for instance, across schools. Like, so how are you working? And obviously, I work in school too, and like we're working on that too, and you can't be super, to the day, but
yeah.
and
we've talked
very
about
resources
that
too.
Yeah, we've spoken about that, because we don't expect every child that comes in to be in this exact same place in the curriculum, and that's why. I neglected to say that we use Teachers College for our literacy program, and with funding we were able to purchase the virtual units that go with that.
That's great.
Yeah. So that's why that's where these tutors are learning the units. So they may not know exactly where the child was, but working with the reading consultant from the child's school, and also with the teacher, they'll get a sense of approximately where the child was in his or her studies at that point. So we're anticipating that.
Thank you.
I did want to share at one of our future meetings, I asked Sam Rosenberg to stop in just to give you a sense of what the math program looks like at the elementary level. I was really impressed with some of the things that I saw the math coaches presenting to the teachers in their building. So I asked her if she would share that with you. So if you're interested, I'll have her come in, and it was really very engaging. I think this is at the elementary level, so I'd love to have you be aware of what she's using in math.
That sounds great. I'd love that. And any opportunity to talk about Gigi is much appreciated. We won the Gigi photo selfie contest, our district did, which is exciting.
I know.
So I want to hear about that too. Exciting stuff. Any other questions for Dr. Gata? No, thank you so much. This is really important, for continuity of services, I think. So thank you for working so hard on this. Yep. Let's see, no old business. There are no tabled items. And so I will entertain a motion to adjourn unless anybody has anything else.
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Janice? Second by Robin?
Sure.
I think,
Second.
is that her dog seconded?
Yes, my dog seconded it.
We'll take that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
For the rest of your evening. See you guys
Have
soon.
a good evening. Bye.
Night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Night. Linda, I have a quick question for you.
Yes. Yep.
Does Amy Over still work for Stratford as a tutor? Do you know? She was one of my teachers that retired, and